Welcome to another deep dive. We're tackling your questions on hiring Appium developers. You want to find the perfect talent for your ad project. We can help with that.
Absolutely.
But first,
Yes.
want a quick tip to get you started. Head over to theperfectdeveloper.com. Try out the 5 questions there.
I know that one.
Yeah, it's a really great tool to figure out exactly what you need in a developer. Okay, now let's get back to those Appium developers. So the first thing everyone wants to know is, what is it? What exactly is an Appium developer? What do they actually do?
Well, you know how critical it is for your app to work well on any device, right? iPhone, Android.
Your tablet, yeah, everything. Appium developers, they're the ones who make sure that happens, testing experts. Specifically, they write automated tests using the Appium framework.
Oh, so they're not just coding the app itself, they're making sure the code actually works.
Yeah.
That's it. They're writing scripts that basically simulate how real users would interact with your app on all those different platforms. So you catch those bugs, the glitches, before they reach your users.
Okay, so that makes sense. That sounds super important. But the next big question, at least from what we've seen, is how much is this going to cost? Everyone wants to know, how much is this going to set them back to hire one of these folks?
It's a really valid question, and theperfectdeveloper.com, they really dig into that.
Oh, good. So what do they say?
Well, based on their research, Appium developers in the US can make, anywhere from around $50,000, if they're just starting out, to over $150,000 for a real pro with tons of experience.
Wow, that is a pretty big range. So what factors, what are some of the things that influence how much it will cost?
Like you might expect, experience is a big one, but location matters too. And then also the specific skills they bring to the table. Some of the really in-demand skills right now that tend to come with higher salaries, expertise in those programming languages like Java or Python, and deep knowledge of all those different testing frameworks out there.
Okay, so if you need someone who can really just jump right into a really complex project, you're probably going to be looking at that higher end of the salary range.
Probably, yeah. But there's also another layer to that cost question. How are you actually hiring? Is it full-time freelance? Are you outsourcing?
Oh, that's true. So lots of options there.
Yeah. And they've each got their own pros and cons, especially when it comes to budget. You know what? Theperfectdeveloper.com actually has this really great breakdown of all those different hiring models.
Oh, okay. So even choosing the right hiring model can really impact the overall cost.
Big time. Yep. Full-time employees, they offer you stability, they're integrated into the team, but there's additional costs there like benefits and taxes and all that. Part-time, that can be more budget-friendly.
I bet.
But they might not always be available when you need them. And then there's outsourcing.
Right. Which is...
That can give you access to a global talent pool, so potentially lower rates. But it can get a little more complex with communication and managing the project.
Oh, I bet. So many options.
Yeah.
It's kind of like trying to choose between a prefix menu and just ordering a la carte. It really depends on, your appetite and how much you want to spend.
I like that analogy. And theperfectdeveloper.com can really help you figure out, what your appetite is.
That makes sense.
They'll help you assess your project needs, your timeline, and obviously your budget to help you find that most cost-effective model for your situation.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we talked about the cost, but how do you know you're getting a good Appium developer? What should you be looking for, in terms of skills and experience?
You want to make sure you're not just hiring someone who can talk the talk. They actually need to be able to walk the walk.
Of course.
Theperfectdeveloper.com actually really emphasizes that it's not just about those hard skills, it's about the soft skills too.
Yeah, because even if someone's this amazing coder, if they can't communicate well with the team or explain their process, that's going to be a problem.
For sure. Exactly. Think of it this way. Technical skills are the ingredients, but the soft skills, those are the recipe. That brings everything together.
Okay, I love that. So what are some of the key ingredients, those hard skills that you should be looking for in an Appium developer?
Well, being fluent in Appium itself is kind of a given, right?
Right.
But they also need to be proficient in at least one of the programming languages it supports.
Okay.
Like Java, Python, JavaScript. Those are some pretty common ones. Plus, they need a solid understanding of testing frameworks and the mobile platforms you're targeting, like iOS, Android, all that. And ideally, some experience with CI/CD integration would be a huge plus.
CI/CD? I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, yeah. That's a common one. It stands for Continuous Integration and Continuous Delivery. It's basically a way to automate like the whole process of building, testing, and deploying software.
Okay.
It's super valuable in mobile app development because it just really helps to ensure that code changes are integrated smoothly and tested really well.
So it streamlines the whole development process.
Yes, exactly. It leads to faster releases that you can really rely on.
Okay, that makes sense. But honestly, with all these skills, finding an Appium developer is starting to sound a little, I don't know, like a little like finding a unicorn.
Haha, yeah.
Rare and magical.
Yeah, it can definitely feel that way. But you know what? Resources like theperfectdeveloper.com can make that whole quest a lot less daunting. They have a bunch of really helpful resources, sample interview questions, coding challenges just for Appium developers, and tips on how to assess not just technical proficiency, but those important soft skills too.
So it's not just about, checking off boxes on a resume. It's about understanding how they think, how they solve problems, how they work with other people.
Exactly. Those qualities, those are what make a good developer, no matter how impressive all those technical skills might be.
For sure. So let's say I'm starting to get a handle on, the skills and experience I need. Where do I even begin? Where do I start my search to find these talented Appium developers? Do I just, wander off into the digital wilderness alone?
Well, you could, but it might be a long and confusing journey.
Right.
Luckily, there are some resources out there that can be like a map for you.
A map.
Yeah, to guide you to the right places, like theperfectdeveloper.com, for example.
Oh, of course.
They offer advice on where to find that top talent, like online platforms, LinkedIn and GitHub. They'll also break down the pros and cons of different hiring avenues, like freelance versus going with an agency.
Okay. So it's like having a personal Sherpa guiding your Appium developer expedition.
Exactly. They'll help you navigate all that, all that terrain, avoid those pitfalls, and hopefully help you reach that summit of, finding your perfect developer match.
This is so helpful. Before we move on, are there any other key pieces of advice from theperfectdeveloper.com that I should keep in mind?
One thing they really hammer home is the importance of really defining your project needs up front. What platforms are you actually targeting? What's your budget? What kind of timeline are you working with?
Right.
What specific functionalities does your app have to have?
Yes, you don't waste time.
Exactly. Having clear answers to all of those questions will help you really focus your search. Attract the right people. It's kind of like going to the grocery store, the shopping list, right?
Yeah.
You're a lot less likely to come home with a cart full of impulse buys and nothing for dinner.
I love that. Okay, so preparation is key. Knowing what you need can help avoid, wasting time and energy on candidates who just aren't the right fit. And speaking of fit, are there any final words of wisdom from theperfectdeveloper.com before we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
They encourage you to think about it differently. Don't just think about hiring somebody. Think about, building a relationship.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about filling a position. It's about finding someone who's really going to, become part of the team.
Exactly. Finding the right Appium developer is just the beginning, right?
Right.
It's like the start of a collaboration. And like any relationship, you need that good communication, mutual respect, and, those shared goals that we talked about.
Makes sense. So let's say you found that special someone. How do you keep them around? How do you make sure that this Appium developer, they don't just join the team, but they stay on the team?
Oh, retention.
Yeah, exactly.
Retention. Great question. And theperfectdeveloper.com. They touch on that a bit.
Oh, good. What do they say?
Retention is key. I mean, what's the point of all this effort to find the right person if they just, take off after a few months?
All right. You're back to square one.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key things to keeping Appium developers happy? Engaged, wanting to stick around?
Well, competitive compensation is huge. You always want to make sure that you're offering a good salary, benefits package that really reflects their skills and experience.
For sure.
Like we were talking about before, those highly sought after skills, those come with higher salary expectations a lot of the time.
Right. You want your developers to feel like they're valued, like what they do really matters.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing it's not all about the money, is it?
You're right, it's not. Theperfectdeveloper.com, they really highlight how important it is to have a good work environment. Positive, supportive. You want to make sure that the developer feels like, a valued member of the team.
Okay.
Not just like a coding machine.
Right. So things like, clear communication, regular feedback, giving them opportunities to like learn new things, to grow. Those are all important.
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget about giving them some challenging projects. Appium developers, they thrive on like solving those tricky problems.
Yeah, makes sense.
Gives them a chance to really stretch their skills, get them involved in those interesting projects, and they're a lot more likely to stay.
So it's really about like, that feeling of ownership, that they're really engaged with what they're doing.
Absolutely. You want them to feel invested in the success of the project, like their work is making a difference.
So it's not just about hiring someone for today, it's about building that relationship that, helps both sides for years to come.
Couldn't said it better. And theperfectdeveloper.com, they're a great resource to, get started on the right foot. They have tons of info on how to make a positive work environment for developers, how to set those expectations from the beginning, and how to foster those, long-term relationships.
That's good to know. Wow. This has been like a ton of information. We've covered so much. Any other like essential tips from theperfectdeveloper.com before we move on?
One last thing, I guess, theperfectdeveloper.com, they really emphasize how important it is to kind of treat that hiring process like it's like the start of a collaboration.
Okay.
So think about good communication right from the beginning.
So be really upfront about, the goals of the project, expectations, even like, budget limits right from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. Transparency is key.
Yeah.
And don't just, talk at potential candidates.
Well, yeah.
Listen to them. What's their experience been? What are their like aspirations? What are they looking for?
So it's almost like, dating, isn't it? You're not just trying to find a developer. You're trying to find the right fit for, your project and their goals.
Yeah, I like that. It really is about, finding that match that you're both, kind of enthusiastic about the project. If you're both excited to work together, that's a great way to start, to start a successful collaboration.
Makes a lot of sense. So, okay, with all of this in mind, if someone's listening and they're feeling a little overwhelmed, like they're about to set off on this, grand quest for the holy grail of Appium developers, what's like the one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't try to do it alone. There are resources out there, like theperfectdeveloper.com.
Of course.
That can make it so much easier. They can help you, refine your search, understand what you should be looking for, and they even give you tools to like actually assess candidates.
Speaking of theperfectdeveloper.com, you mentioned that they have this thing called the 5 questions, right?
Yeah.
What is that exactly? And how can it help people find the right Appium developer?
Oh yeah, the 5 questions. That's a great one. It's designed to like really help you figure out exactly what you need in a developer. It takes you through this series of questions about your project, your budget, your technical requirements, all the stuff we've been talking about. And based on your answers, it will suggest some developer profiles that like match what you need.
Oh, okay. So it kind of takes some of the guesswork out of it.
Exactly. Streamlines the whole process and helps you, zero in on those promising candidates.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for taking us on this deep dive into the world of Appium developers. I feel like I've learned so much.
My pleasure. Glad I could help.
And for our listeners, if you want to keep learning about Appium developers, don't forget to head over to theperfectdeveloper.com. Try out the 5 questions. It's really a great way to help you find the perfect developer for you. Until next time, happy hiring.